Right. Yeah. I imagine there's going to be some teething issues in this initial week. Okay, well, I've got to desperately try not to tailor the lesson entirely to you, because that would be the impulse. I've got you on the other side of this camera. Okay, so in the last lesson, we started out with doing a couple of drills, just to help refresh our minds on what's going to be mostly talked about today. So I think at 60 beats a minute, what's going to happen is I'll get you to mute your mic, and I'll do the drill with you. So that way you can do it to my metronome and you can hear me. I can't hear you because the delay, right? It's the only way I can think of getting us to be able to do something together. So initially, I'd like us to do inversions on C, starting first inversion, coming up to first inversion. So like this. All right, 60 BPM. So the BPM here is just to apply some pressure. That pressure is one of these things that I wish I had practiced with more when I was younger. I always hated metronomes, and I think the reason I hated them was because, one, it doesn't feel like a drum kit, but two, also because it supplies this pressure. And for some reason, it doesn't feel as acute when you're with a drummer. Like somehow you could just slot into that easier. Yeah. But the pressure is so valuable. Like, you don't really know something unless you can do it now, not 5 milliseconds later, but like right on the tick. So even when metronome BPM are slow and you're just working at syncing in with those, you're honing all of those small rhythm skills, and it applies just enough pressure onto you that you might, say, forget one of the inversions, especially after doing it for multiple minutes. And one thing that I encourage the last class to do, and I want to encourage again, is take exercises like this and give yourself a time limit of how long they have to go for. All right. I've got this wooden metronome one from YouTube. What do they call it? Wood Metronome HD. Beautiful Metronome is the name, right? I like it because it's a nice wood knock. Yeah. I really just like the ones that are like electronic beeps and things like that. To me, a wood knock sounds better. But each video goes for 10 minutes. And what I used to do for a little while was just cue up the video, put the metronome on, and try to play out the entire 10 minutes doing some rhythmic practice. And I would always find that in the first 2 or 3 minutes, it's kind of like, it's just repetitive. And things start feeling like they drag and your attention starts slipping and mistakes might start coming in. But it's when you push through all of that and you keep listening that you start hearing more things about your playing, especially in subdivisions. Like you might hear that your subdivisions sound really bland. You also will start finding out all kinds of things about your technique. Like, why is my hand cramping up? Yeah. You know, why is my right hand feeling sore? Like that shouldn't feel sore this at all. And you only get those after a long period of playing. Long period of playing the same thing too, because if you're changing it up, usually there's enough variance in your technique that you give yourself a rest. And while that's very good for us, like we do want to rest things and not develop RSI, we also want to know if we're doing something wrong. And this is a great error detection. So take whatever practices you're doing with a metronome and try to run them for a couple of minutes, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. All right, so 60 BPM, starting here. We're just going to run up and down. We're going to do, tell you what, if I can time how long we'll do it. We'll do a minute of that, and then I'll do a minute of minor as well. So we'll do it in minor. 2, 3, 4. There's a minute. Okay, so I would, if it was me, and this is the drill I was doing, I would do it for longer than a minute, I think. But you know, should be enough to refresh us for today. So do you know the minors as well? So
oops, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do a better fingering of it probably, but yeah.
Well, that's another conversation, isn't it? Like what fingerings you use. And I defaulted in the last class to doing this fingering. Yeah, so it's all 2, 3, 4, and man, it was comfortable. And I found it really easy to switch between. It would totally. I've never played it with that fingering before. I don't really think, because I especially with this chord, the minor shape. Right, I'm always playing that with kind of that shape, actually on the guitar. But if you are kind of climbing and coming up and down the neck, that jazz fingering kind of thing, where you're just recycling those top fingers, it feels really comfy.
So
now, yeah, one thing I would add, and I didn't say this last class, I wish I had remembered, is that I also wouldn't just practice this straight up and down. I do it with leaps too. So you might do say, or maybe doing like sequences. Like if we think about it like a scale, we go up 3 and back 1, like. Apply musical concepts to everything you do, and practice becomes a lot more fun, because each day you can go, oh, I want to do this one instead. Like, or I want to do one where it's like I do play here and I go all the way down. And then, like whatever comes to mind. Alrighty, so same deal again. We're going to do a minute of this just to refresh us on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. All right, so little refresher on those. Hopefully that's all old hat. The other thing that I think is that we talked about is taking our majors. First thing on the sheet really is take your majors and think pentatonics. So let's refresh our pentatonic scales in the key of C between D and B, 6 notes per position. So what we're going to do is go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we start on the next note of the scale here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we start on the next note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
okay.
All right. Do you reckon you could do that at a BPM, or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do we got here? 60. Oh, come on. Why is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 couplets might be fast. Yakata duckata, yakata duckata, yakata duckata, yak. So that I think we can push it triple, triple. That might be better. So that comfortable for you?
Yeah, that's all good. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Let's just quickly, just so we can stay together, discuss the turnaround. Probably the easiest thing is to double up the top note. Do you think? So if we go, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll double up in both directions. When I practice, a lot of the time I don't do that. I try to intentionally avoid that because I almost never want to do that musically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like normally when I practice, I go. Right, so I'd immediately transition down. It is tricky though, so we'll just double up the top note for now.
Okay.
All right, let's see if we can do a minute of that at triplets. Yuck, yuck, right? Ready? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and I'm assuming that's a minute because I actually couldn't say it. Man, the first time we were going through that, I made a mistake on the way down, right when I was thinking, I can't see the timer.
Oh, okay.
And then the next time on the way down, I'm like, you made a mistake here before, you can't make a mistake here again.
Yeah. Yeah.
All righty. Okay. So refresher on those kind of things. It's a really fun exercise to get going. It's kind of like almost an Eric Johnson Sixers kind of thing.
Right.
And it's quite fun. Like it's a way that we don't often think of moving on the neck. We want to try to stay in a position, but like, like at some point when you're doing some big run, you're going to want to move like that. And what I've been kind of playing around with a little bit recently is doing, say, position changes like that on a different pattern. So if you do like a right, like so you start mixing the idea of like sixes with fours or sixes with threes. That are really fun. Okay, so looking at the first musical examples on the page, we get some inversions.
Okay.
Oh, can you read them?
Sorry. Oh,
You got the page reader?
yeah, I've got the email there. I hadn't opened it. I should have opened the page, like the document beforehand. Sorry.
It's cool. For some reason on Sean's computer, it all came out like super light gray. He's on a Mac.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I was like, can you like Control A and like make it all black or something? He said he got it working in the end. I am using Open Office. Like I'm being one of those dudes who gets. I really object to Microsoft's new policy of I'm going to sell you software for 1 year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, Microsoft, no, I'm not interested in that. So I switched to using Open Office. Come back and see me when I'm 50. I'll probably be using Linux too.
Yeah.
I'll be one of those dudes.
Yeah.
Although Linux is getting better all the time, like it's becoming more and more of a serious option.
Right. Yeah.
It runs faster, it's more stable, and it's more secure. And really, other than audio software, damn, and video games, damn, most of what I do on my computer, then okay, so have a look at the musical example. We can see here we've got a first inversion C triad and the pentatonic scale written up next to it. What I'm saying is that you can combine some of your theory skills with your reading skills. I wish people had encouraged me to do that a lot more when I was younger, to think about the music, you know. If I'm playing in a key signature, that doesn't mean I'm supposed to memorize sharps and flats. That means that the network of scales that I know should light up on the fretboard. If I'm in F, then I should know, right? Like, and it should be that if I see the music go up in steps, that I'm doing this, right? And leaps, I should be able to look at the page and go, oh, that's a third. So if it's a third, you know, like, oh, sorry, that was a third. That was a third. I should know what those things look like. So if we look here, first inversion, 3 of the notes of the 5 of the pentatonic are already covered. And what we need to find is the one that is after 5, so the 6th, and the one that is after 1, the 2. This is a great place for us to come back to that tetrachord diagram at the top of the page, really reinforce in our head. Right, 5 is a tone above, sorry, 6 is a tone above 5. If I know where a 5 is, and I do know where 5s are because I've been practicing my inversions, a tone above that is always going to be my 6. All right, a tone above 1 is always going to be my 2. So to make a major pentatonic, I take my arpeggio. I play 5. Well, the next note, sorry, 3, 5. Next note is 6. That's a tone higher. 1. We want to go to 2. It's a tone higher. All right. So I'm doing 2 things here. 1, I'm reinforcing where my triad notes are. 2, I'm now learning where 2 extensions are. I'm learning where the 6 and the 2 are. I'm also acknowledging which ones are in the chord and which ones are out of the chord. Right? The triad is the chord. The ones that are not in there are not part of the chord. And it seems really obvious, but these are the kind of things you have to say to yourself in order to make it make sense. All right, so then we've got to do that in every position, right? So we get here, we go up to the second inversion. Second inversion, well, second inversion we know is 5th in the bass. 5 is going to go up to 6, so that's going to be a tone. Root is going to be up a tone to get to 2. Third. Now, what is included on the sheet is the G, right? So we can make another connection here. If I'm on the 3rd, a minor 3rd up from the major 3rd, very confusing statement.
Yeah.
Let's say 3 semitones above the major 3rd is the 5th, always, if you're on a major chord. And honestly, the more I think about these intervals as I'm playing, the better and easier it is for me to find my way in between chord tones. And not only that, to be able to find the tone I hear in my head.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Like, one thing that scales did not teach me very well was that connection. I mean, it taught me well enough that, you know, I've gotten to where I am now. But in order to push that further, I think for me personally, I think for a lot of people, when you play a scale, you memorize it like a song.
Yeah, right.
You know, I know it in sequence. I don't know it between, say, 2 and 4. I don't know it by taking random chunks out of it. And this, you know, a minor 3rd is a sound that is consistent anywhere on the neck. You know, like playing a minor 3rd, it always sounds like a minor 3rd. So it has this way of just getting you to learn one thing. I'm just learning this interval sound. So when I'm soloing and I hear something that leaps up like that, I know how far it is from repetition. So again, is our inversion and our extensions. Okay, we move up now into root position. And you can see in the music, in the root position, we get C, D, E, G, A. Right, well, so far we've discussed the 2 being a tone above the root. This is where we get into some interesting nitty-gritty about the guitar. Yeah, we can do a tone above the root. It's going to be unusual fingering. However, it sounds very pretty. I really, you know, we were talking about Joey Landreth and like, you know, I like those clashy sounds. Those like the 2 against 3 sounds really cool to me.
Yeah.
But it's an unusual way of fingering it, right? And as I was pointing out to the last class, playing it this way offers you something different than playing it the other way. So the other way, how do we find a tone if it's not up 2 frets?
Yeah.
Up a string, back 3 frets. All right. With the exception of the GB pair. So like, you know, Will, I know you're aware, all of our strings are in 4th straight except for the GB. And the GB is in a 3rd. So that means that any fingering that you're used to being X long is now 1 fret shorter. Just for that GB pair, and then it returns to normal on the BE.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pointing out in the last lesson that sound compared to this sound, because one hangs the suspension, they sound very different. They mean very different things, even in the same song. And it could be even cool musically to do one than the other. Yeah, so like you're getting the suspension and then not a suspension, but they're all the same notes. You know, so if we take that idea and we move it back to position 2, we can do it again here. So we were doing this kind of thing, which is the Steely Dan, right? We have that 2 against 3 again.
Yeah.
All right, but if we then move that, so on the G, we do to the B string, so that's going to be up and back 2. Right, what we end on, the sympathetic resonance gives us a straight major chord. When we do it the other way, what we end up with is a 2 against 3, 5 2 against 3, right? No root.
Yeah.
So again, they don't mean exactly the same thing. Not only that, but half the people are going to prefer one fingering to the other half for some reason. And so they're all worth exploring, right? And we're exploring it through the idea and the lens of interval, right? Right now we're talking about a tone, and these are the 2 different ways you can express a tone on this instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it suggests different fingerings. All right, we have now officially explored the pentatonic with those triads. That is something that is worth practicing. I think a good exercise would be doing a combination of the 2 we were talking about. Something like that, you know, something where you're driving home, this is the triad, this is the triad, this is the triad.
Yeah.
You could play other games too, like you could do the 2 extensions into the triad. Right? And you'll get some cool turning kind of sounding licks because you're always going to be ending on that arpeggio. They're all cool stuff too. So coming down the page. So what we're going to do now is think about less information.
Okay.
All right, one at a time. One of the cool things about the pentatonic scale, as we've been talking a lot, is it works all the time. It's just something that works really well. And why does it work? Well, because it adds effectively the blandest extensions.
Yeah.
Not actually bland. I mean, I really love them. An add 9 on a major chord is nice. It sounds twinkly, but it kind of doesn't change the bass feel of the chord in such a huge way. You know, when the different extensions are going to add different characters, and the ones that come directly from the related pentatonic scale are the ones that are going to be the ones that you can throw in pretty much all the time. Yeah. So on any non-dominant chord, and we're going to split chords now into minor, major, and dominant. On any non-dominant, if it's a major chord, try adding the 6 and the 9. If it's a minor chord, try adding the 7 or the 11. Okay. All right. So the 6, in fact, 6-9 chords, right? I've said this before, it's the jazz full stop. There's not really enough inherent tension to make you want to go anywhere.
Yeah. You
know, in a major 7th, that root and major 7th clash is very powerful. It creates motion. Oh, we want that to lift, which is why, right, that first chord change works so well. The major 7th creates this wonky imbalance that wants to be resolved, that is then resolved in the next chord.
Yeah.
All right. It's like it's like creating a problem in one that you can fix in the next chord, and by doing that, you make everything sound sweeter.
Yeah.
So taking a look at what's written here in the music, where it says C6, we start out in the root position. Then after that, we have the 2 6s. The 2 6s in this position that are near it, right? Now we can find the 6 by coming a tone up. This is all on DGB strings, by the way. We can find the 6 by coming a tone up or a minor third down from the root. So tone up from the 5th and minor third from the root. Just find those locations. I'm assuming you kind of already know. Yeah. Okay. Now I've written out, as you can see on this first root, C6 arpeggio. It's in a bebop rhythm.
Okay.
You guys eventually are going to do like the bebop scale. I can't remember if it was last term or it's this term. But it's this standard bebop kind of thing. You have a pickup note on an off beat onto a downbeat triplet. So you get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Yeah, like it's a familiar sound. I couldn't help myself. It's a great way for you to practice some of these things. So exploring the 6, right? All right. And what we're trying to get here is that when we play a chord, we just know, okay, 6s are here. 6s is here or here. Right, 6 is here. Right? It's important for you to have this map of where the extensions are, especially because most of the extensions don't change location between major and minor, right? Like C6 is a C chord with a 6 in it. C minor 6 is a C minor chord with the same 6 in it. Confusingly, the minor 6 chord does not use a minor 6. It still uses the same old minor 6. The same old major 6. And we have to call it a special chord, including a flat 6, which is a rare chord, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah, the flat 6.
Yeah, that sound, it's pretty. Like it's really, really pretty. I don't know. I kind of figured out when I was doing Quiet After Quiet Stars as a teenager. Do you know the show band though? You know, and it fits so nicely in a lot of those bossa nova kind of chord changes. You know, I've always really liked that flat 6 sound. It's kind of rarer though. Okay, so looking at the musical examples, you can see where all the 6s are, and just a quick suggestion of something to practice, right? Like, which is just a simple kind of coming up as an arpeggio from all these positions. Obviously, that's not the extent of how you should practice them. You should chop and change, invert them, try different things. Like, what if we, you know, swing backwards and forwards? All right. What if we do this? All right. What if we turn that up, that arpeggio, right? So what if we take the first note and move it up an octave? It's called a pivot in jazz language, right? So we just took the first note and moved it up an octave, but it has a very, very, very different feeling sound. So it's worth exploring, right? Like these are the kind of things that you want to explore and play with. Again, we get the add 9s, right? Which we've already discussed in some ways, right? We could play our add 9 like this, or and yet again, we want to try chopping and changing them. You know, I pointed out last time, this is the John Mayer, right? Which is always going from the add 9 to the 3rd. Really famous from Little Wing too, like,
yeah.
You know, which is a good standard move to make.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see a major chord in the coming weeks, in any song that you're doing, and hunt down songs to try it out, play major non-dominant, throw in a 6, throw in a 9. Most of the time it will work, some of the times it won't. And it's about starting your journey experimenting with what do my extensions do to a chord. These particular extensions are not going to do a huge amount. Like I think the 9 adds a kind of sparkle and the 6 adds a kind of warmth. These are my own personal kind of words to describe them. You need to develop your own really about how they make you feel. But they're not going to change everything dramatically, right? That's because we're playing with safe extensions for this week. The further and further wackier you get into like, flat 9s, sharp 9s and things like that, they will really add something else that's going to dramatically change the character. Going down the page a little bit and looking at the -7, all right, I say to people, -7s are, if you want to take a minor chord and make it less dramatic.
Yeah.
Right, like -7s soften things. Minor chords are already they're already super dramatic. Like like short of, I have hit a couple of times when I've been songwriting where I'm like, oh, I've got a minor chord and I want to make it more minor. Which of course then you reach further, you go flat 5, or you might add an extension that makes it darker. But -7 softens the chord. It makes it less minor. Why is that? Well, because we're actually making it more like its relative major chord.
Yeah.
Right, like we're now doing relative major rooted on 6, which effectively makes it C6. If we're doing A-7, it's effectively C6 just rooted on A, which is why Barry Harris talks about it exclusively like that.
Yeah.
Like he just skips the idea that -7s are a thing, really, and just thinks of the C6 scale. So that's why they're safe. However, that is also when you probably don't want to use a -7. Like if you've got a song that's super dramatic and you want it to feel dramatic, doing a -7 is probably not helping you out. It's actually going to soften it and make it feel less dramatic. To a certain extent, the 11 as well. Now the 11, right, just third in the bass. The 11 is definitely going to be, the 11 is definitely going to be a little more tense, but not like if we did the 6 or the 9. So you see this chart, if we flip this chart upside down, so now we're doing C-6, C-9, and C major 7, C major 11, we would actually get some of the more tense versions.
Yeah.
Right, so like a C minor 9, C minor 9, it's wonderfully heartbreaking. Like you darken minor by adding the 9 in, whereas you brighten major by adding the 9. Right, if we do C-6, yet again we darken it. This is that conflict. Yeah. So and again we can do like the every breath you take, break my hand chord. So 9s and 6s darken minor chords and brighten major chords. 7s and 11s on the major side, major 7s are spicier chords than plain major, and 6s and 9s. Again with the 11 too. There you go, first inversion C with an 11 on top. All right, definitely darkened. Yes, we've got C, right? First inversion here. 11, there's the 4. Yeah, definitely darker as an option. So these are some of the ideas you want to start playing around with your chords. You want to start thinking about, where are my extensions based off my inversions? Why? Well, because inversions are small packets of information that are really easy to understand. Larger 6-string chords are just multiple stacked inversions on top of each other. So it can be much harder to visualize all of my 7s across the neck rather than just one of them.
Yeah.
It also is going to help you tie in specifically the sound of adding that one note.
Yep.
Whereas it can get a little blurry when we spread it out across 6 strings. All right, I have actually made this lesson slightly quicker, so we can move on to the stuff I want to talk to other people about. So, building lines. We've explored some material. We actually have material here to build lines, right? We've got chords, and we have scales, and we have extensions. That is stuff we can make lines out of. How do we do that? Well, some guidelines. We only use triad notes. It's going to sound pretty nursery rhymey. It's very, very, very consonant, but it also can be boring because there's not very much excitement happening. There's no tension. If we only use notes outside the triad, it will only be tension, which is a different kind of potentially less pleasant boring. So we've got to use bits of each to make it interesting. Resolutions usually occur on the beat. All right. And usually, especially at the start of a chord, it's unlikely that you would resolve your line on the second beat of a chord. That usually sounds like you were planning to do it late. There are instances where that would work, but less reliably. Ones and fives are the most solid resolutions. They're going to sound like you really tie in. Ones, especially for beginners, but threes give character. Threes are where all of the color tones are. So it's important. It can be important to aim for those sometimes too. And notes outside the triad are often used as connecting notes between triads of different chords. Okay, let's take a quick look at the nearness of you underneath. We scroll down a little bit. We've got some sheet music. So I'll start. I'll do the anacrusis. You know what anacrusis is? Yeah, short introductory bar. That usually, by the way, anacrusis almost always goes 5-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's always
6-1.
lift. Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's almost always in most music. It's this 5 resolution because it's such a powerful boom boom getting us up into the note. And this one is 2. Right? We go 5-1, and then 2-3. So we start the melody on 3, right?
Excellent. Yeah, right. Okay.
It's not the pale moon that excites me, right? Now, this is a perfect example of sometimes you need to stretch where the resolution happens. This line would sound like garbage, hot, salty garbage, if we hit that A early. It's not the pale, right? Because we killed the effect of building up to that note by giving it too early. So you can see how the resolution of that F chord, we get 5-1, 2, 3, hit it on the first beat.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to have a stab at analyzing the first bar for me? Or So how are they, which are triad notes, which are not? Why do you think they have used things that are outside the triads?
Yeah, so 3 to the 5. A to C, and then something like that. It's sort of the 4 to 3 is like
Now 4 to 3, that's a really interesting movement, isn't it? Because after you play the 4, you kind of have to play the 3.
Have to go to the 3.
And then, you almost also say, like, you know, there are no rules in music, but 9 times out of 10, I found something that really constantly spoke out mistake in my improvisations is if I play the 4 and then not follow it with a 3.
Yep.
So you pointed out, okay, we get 4, which is actually on the beat, creates tension. Why? Why do you think we're creating tension here?
I guess it's like a little bit just to get into that chord change, I guess.
Right. We're creating a build of tension to the chord.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like we come over the precipice. You know.
Yeah.
So
lyrics, I guess.
Sorry, especially the.
I guess especially with the lyrics, maybe like the excites, how it's crossing the bar line.
Yeah.
Word you want it to resolve still though, maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting idea that you're going to have the strong beat on the second part, excites me,
Yeah.
There's an interesting whole bunch of slight tangent here. There's a whole bunch of
I can't.
whole bunch of interesting actor discussion about iambic pentameter in Shakespeare, which I don't know if you know, 5 beats a line, alternating stress patterns, right?
Yeah.
5 beats a line in a 10 beat, 10 beat total line, 5 stresses in a line. And there's a really interesting argument about which side of the meter you accent. I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. And they end up changing meaning in your performance by which one you stress. It's like the closest thing I can think of to a poetry music connection in that way.
Yeah.
Where you put your downbeat across the word in a melody, it does change the meaning. Anyway, in this particular one, we play 4-3. So the 4 creates immediate tension that we have to resolve. We come to the 3, but in this instance, the 3 is acting as a kind of in-between note, really, to the G from the C minor.
Yeah.
It falls nicely, right? Like if you imagine that we get pale moon, triad, run to C minor, right? Like it's a line that naturally falls into the note of the next chord. So we can see here the first 3 beats are just like, I'm going to be on F major 7, so I don't have to think about it. But in that last beat, we add complexity.
Yeah.
And the complexity brings us to C. Okay, we'll keep going. So excites me. All right.
That's all right.
Sorry, it's his mum.
Sorry, it was my mum.
That's cool. So G on the C chord, that's the 5th, that's nice. G to a B flat to the minor 7, right? Color tone that is going to be very complex sounding against the F, right? Because it's going to be the 7 on the C minor 7, which is going to sound very consonant and fancy. But is then going to become a color tone that probably needs to be resolved. So when we play the 4, we usually go to the 3. Here we see it again. 4, as the F change happens, we hold the 4 for a moment, and in the last beat, we go to the A, the 3rd from the F, and resolve down to thrills, the F from the B major 7, the 5. So far we've had a resolution on 3 in the first instance, 5, and then 5 again. Right? We can see the target tones coming out. We can see that essentially on each chord, what they do in this melody at least is pick a couple of chord tones to hold on to for a while and then try to join to the next chord.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. That is going to continue the whole way through, right? If you choose this B flat diminished 7th, right? The E, that's from B flat dim 7, right? That's the tritone. Oh, hold on, it's a diminished chord. So how do you choose which one is the 5? You know, it's from the diminished chord. They're all in my 3rd part. You know, I suppose from B flat it would be the 5. So, yeah. So you can see there's this constant pattern of some strong note, and then we create dissonance and interest that we resolve out in the next bar. All right. This is also something we talk about with improvisation. Usually you might start with a simple idea and get more complex as you go up. So the longer you're playing on a chord, the weirder and more wacky you can get. It's not always true, right? If we take just that first example, if we start dissonant and then go into the chord, that sounds kind of cool too. All right. It doesn't sound so cool if we do it the other way around. Not unless we're going somewhere with it, right? Because we still probably want that to resolve.
Yeah.
Okay, so other things that we should be thinking about too. So by observing melodies like this, we can start thinking about how we can structure our own improvisations. Maybe what I need to do is write out a bunch of chords and think chord tones for the first 2 beats, and then try to join the using scales on the last 2 beats into the next chord. We choose a target tone from the next chord and we walk scale tone wise down to there. All right. Fantastic exercise. It's definitely one that I'm going to give you guys in one of the other lessons. But planning things like this means that we are targeting tones. We are focusing on the resolution, on the movement of chords. Melodies that don't do that aren't necessarily bad melodies, but they can sound waffly. And I think this is the number one problem with most people, most guitarists, when they improvise, is that, you know, we waffle. We waffle. Pentatonic works on everything, so why not just use it all the time?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is how we start breaking out of that mold, is that we pay more attention to what the chords are doing, and we pay more attention to the special notes in between them and shoot for them. The more we focus on that, the more our melodies will have shape. Now, speaking of shape in melody, can you talk to me about how melodic mirroring is used? One, do you know what melodic mirroring is? Two, how's it being used in this?
I'm not quite sure what melodic mirroring is, sorry.
Okay, so melodic mirroring or melodic sequencing, people call it different things, is this idea that we can take a feature in a melody, interval pattern, timing, it doesn't matter, and reproduce it either totally on the next chord or partially.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So, for example, if we're doing a 12 bar, right?
Yeah.
Melodic mirroring indirect is that I just took the same, applied the same theory of notes to the second chord. It doesn't have to be that though. It could be that I just took the rhythm figure. Right? That's still melodic mirroring because I'm mirroring the rhythm of it. Why is melodic mirroring important? Because repetition is what makes music.
Yeah.
All right. Music with no repetition is usually referred to as noise.
Yeah.
And any amount of symmetry we can create, whether or not that's rhythmic, whether or not that's an idea. So in this melody, I think the idea is this kind of leap up, crawl down.
Yeah, okay.
All right. It uses a lot of intervallics to get high and then it falls. Almost every line we start, you know, pale, pale moon that excites me, that thrills and delights me. So we constantly have this kind of coming down, leap up, coming down, leap up, coming down, leap up. And it's what creates a certain amount of predictability in the melody. All right. That predictability is what gets people humming and singing along with the melody. That's why it's catchy. That's why it was such a famous song.
Yeah.
All right. It is also something we forget to do when we write or construct lines.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do we make our stuff sound more like music? Well, music has these features, so we need to work on including these features. We need to work on thinking about, if I play a line that moves in a certain way, I want to play another line that moves kind of like that. All right. Non sequiturs in music quite often happen by people joining two ideas that don't really make sense.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and we've all heard that and we've all done that. It's a non sequitur. It's just that there's no way that idea led into that other idea. They are perfectly fine ideas by themselves, though. So what you've got to try to think about and explore is, while I'm improvising, maybe recording yourself, maybe slowing down when you're improvising, but what can I do to involve some of these ideas, some of these things that we are reading straight off the music and taking it straight to our playing? Yeah. Okay, so start consciously thinking about them. The first step, I think, is having a look at a bunch of melodies, and each week I want to kind of pull up a new melody to take a look at. We may do a lesson where there's a couple. And look at how they use these concepts. Because intellectually understanding those is the first thing to being able to recognize what's going wrong in your playing if it's not working the way you want it to. It's also like, you know, we were talking about those Joey clips. Yeah. And like, he is so good at that. Yeah. The lines he plays, they sound like it's something he learned. You know, it's like this idea of, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense coming off this one. And that's what we've got to aim for, is not joining by non sequitur. Okay, so Yeah, I think we'll covered pretty much everything that's on the sheet this week.
Cool.
Okay. So next week, what I would like to do is look at doing some of this stuff ourselves. So we might take a simple chord progression and try to join different aspects of it. Figure out how, say, on the neck, different suggestions are made. You know, like if I'm targeting the third as a targeting thirds, right? Well, if I do that in different places on the neck, it kind of feels very different. Right, between those thirds and those ones. And it's going to suggest kind of different shapes of lines, depending on where you're on the neck. So they're all worth exploring. And they're all more and more and more what your practice should sound like. You know, your practice should start diverging from the kind of stuff that we did at the start. You know, once you can do this confidently, the value in this exercise diminishes. You know, really what you want to do is find musical ways of practicing the same concepts, which I think scale practice, arpeggio practice, they all eventually should end up just sounding like music.
Yeah.
You know,
so.
And it's the journey to that point, right? So, maybe next week we'll do one that maybe involves, we'll start doing some drills that involve two chords. So and by next week, I mean next fortnight. Have a think about it. I haven't quite written the lesson yet, so
Cool.
we'll get there.
That's all right. That sounds cool.
All right, then. So, like I really doubt you're going to have a lot of questions and stuff following this lesson, but if you do, and if you want to meet up again, you know, let me know.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
Anything you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think that was all good. Thank you. That's it really helps to sort of just to look at it like this. It's stuff I've been trying to do, but to have it there sort of like I don't know how to verbalize it.
I always thought it was an amazing change that you can take the same set of data, and that's what we did at the start, right? We played a pentatonic. But when I start thinking about those as arpeggios, it really changes the whole way of me processing them on the neck.
Yeah.
And it changes the way I play them too. So what I've tried to focus on a lot as for my own development is always trying to think of how many different angles can I look at this thing from, because the different angles always suggest something different to me. Yeah. So look, I'm glad it's working. I'm always open for feedback.
Yeah. No, it's great. Thank you. It's really good. Yeah. Thanks.
Alrighty, man. Well, if I don't see you online in between now and the next one, I'll catch you then. Or a messenger or something. But I'd be more than happy to meet up and talk about the other stuff we were following up with.
Yeah, sure. That'd be good if you've got time and stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I got time. Like it's lockdown, you know.
Yeah.
Alrighty, man. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, we'll check in again later.
Cool. Okay. Take care.
See you, man. You too.